Hey there, welcome back to another video. Today I'm talking about the transit planets and what each of them represents whenever they transit a particular part of your birth chart. In order to gain value from the transits, that is what's happening right now in the sky, you have to know your birth chart first. That's really the prerequisite is getting to know yourself independent of external events and external circumstances, because what your birth chart represents is your core personality, your core set of predispositions and perceptions for seeing and reacting to the world in certain kinds of ways that's unique to you. It's the core that's buried underneath all of those layers of conditioning and experience that happen to you over the course of your life. And to really know yourself is to make those deeper, more unconscious parts of yourself more conscious by peeling back layers of conditioning and knowing who you are independent of how it is the world would have you be. Okay, so the birth chart represents. So it's important to first know your birth chart, and you can always book a reading with me in order to know that better. But when the transit planets enter certain parts of your chart, they illuminate and bring certain values and perspectives to different things that are already in your birth chart. So it's important to first know your birth chart, but you know, in knowing ourselves, we're preparing ourselves to be able to better and more consciously respond to external events. We can't control external events, what happens out there, but we can control how we respond to them. And that's really the meat of the value that birth chart astrology gives us. So transit planets, to really know, it's one thing to read a horoscope that's kind of, written in a very general way. But the first thing you need to know about horoscopes and what they deal with, and that is the transits and how the transits are going to be affecting you, is that horoscopes pertain to your rising sign, your ascendant, rather than your sun, because it's your ascendant that determines how the signs in the planet, the signs in the houses, I'm sorry, are aligned in your birth chart. And that is going to determine, for example, the sun is in Leo right now. Which house in your birth chart does Leo fall in? Which house cusp does Leo cover, if any? It may be intercepting a house like it does in my chart. But either way, the sun is going to illuminate the things of that house wherever Leo falls in your birth chart. So you're not going to know exactly how, otherwise, perhaps through experience, but you're not going to know exactly how the sun being in Leo is going to affect you without knowing which part of your chart that actually has to do with. So, generally speaking, I'm going to go through each of the planets and tell you what the transit planets shed light on. So the sun brings vitality and visibility to the things of whatever birth chart, part of your birth chart it is entering into. So the things of the house that Leo falls in, for example, are the things that the sun is illuminating in your life right now. So in my birth chart, I have Leo in my seventh house. It's intercepting my seventh house. Cancer's on my descendant cusp. But it means that it brings more conscious awareness to my social life and my connections with people one-on-one. Because that's what the seventh house deals with. It's about one-on-one connections and partnerships and marriages in business and your personal life. You as an individual connecting with someone else as an individual. So the sun, whatever part of your chart it's entering, it brings vitality, energy toward the things of that house, and also visibility so you can see them more clearly. The moon is the fastest moving planetary body in the sky that we use in astrology for the most part. major placements, right? And because it deals with our emotional instincts and how we think and feel about things and process information, um, the transit moon has to do with your mood swings. So the things of whatever house and whatever aspects it's making at any given time are going to bring reflection and deeper thought and emotionality to those things. So the moon is really about the transit moon is about mood swings and where you're placing your emotional energy and your deeper, thinking energy toward. Venus transits have to do with social and romantic whims. So wherever Venus is in your chart, there's going to be a social, romantic, and also material value placed on the things of that house, and material expressions being aimed toward the things of that particular house that Venus is transiting in your chart. Mars, transit Mars has to do with where your work and aggressions are oriented. And it's also sex drive. So it's the things of Mars. You're the workhorse inside of you. It's how you do things. Venus is more about like what you want. Mars is more about how you get it. It's your sort of warrior mentality. It's going to be aimed toward the things of whatever house it's transiting. So it has to do with aggression and how you deal with short-term conflict, and also sex drive, because sex drive is a primal instinct within us all. Jupiter, a little bit longer of a transit now. We're talking about a year, a little more than a year for Jupiter to travel through a sign. Could be more, could be less, depending on the sign and depending on when its retrograde periods are. But Jupiter transits bring periods of inspiration to the things of whatever house it's traveling towards. So if it is Jupiter's transiting your fifth house, that's going to have to do with creative projects and friends and pleasure and leisurely activities. Maybe you'll take up a new hobby and have a lot of like kind of expansive energy aimed toward that new hobby. So Jupiter brings periods of inspiration to the things of whatever house it's traveling through. Saturn brings, on the other hand, reconstructing, restructuring, and reprioritizing the things of whatever house it's going through. So it's about either solidifying the principles that you've already had, especially if you're a Saturnian, Capricornian type person. Saturn's your chart ruler, for example. You're already going to have a pre-concern with having solid values and principles that you live by. But it could bring some sort of change, some sort of hard lessons that force you into restructuring and reprioritizing the things of whatever house it's transiting through. Uranus, longer transit period here. We're talking about 8+ years. This brings periods of big change, and change for its own sake, change that isn't necessarily on the basis of any conscious principles. Conscious principles are things that Saturn deals with, but Uranus goes beyond that and sort of works outside of principles. That's why like Aquarius is the secondary or co-traditional ruler of Saturn, is because Capricorn deals with like what is maintained, conserved within the boundaries of the principles that you set, and Uranus being the more Aquarius planet, Aquarius likes to break those rules and see what's outside of those boundaries and the rules that we're setting. So Uranus kind of represents those things, the things beyond the boundaries, the things beyond the principles. So whatever house and therefore whatever area of life Uranus is transiting through in your chart at any given time, those are the things regarding those are the rules regarding the things you're going to be breaking, right? So whatever structured way of thinking you have about the things of that house, you're going to seek change in that regard. Going beyond Saturn, right? Neptune isn't going to get close to transiting through your whole chart over the course of your life. And this is one of the things that makes where Uranus too, but also Neptune, these outer planets, what makes them unique in our chart. It's not so much the birth sign that they're in for us, but it's where they fall in our birth chart, house-wise, and therefore where the transit progression is going to be through our lives. So Neptune deals with more spiritual perspective shifts. So it's, again, things beyond consciously set boundaries, but beyond that as well, and not just in a Uranian way of like rebelliousness, like I'm going to break these rules, the things of this house that I have set up already. It's going to be beyond that, like where are the deeper values? Where is the more spiritual part of our personality placing its focus and making changes about how it is we understand those things within the greater context of reality. Transit Pluto represents where the parts of our subconscious that are revealed. Now, Pluto takes even longer time to go through the signs than Uranus and Neptune, so it's not going to get close to transiting through our entire chart over the course of our lives. But look at where Pluto is in your birth chart, and that represents where there is subconscious concern already. It's going to represent the area of life where you tend to hide things or have fears surrounding the things of that house, or hidden desires. The reason we hide our desires sometimes is because we fear them, and we fear those deeper, more primal parts of ourselves, even, and more psychological parts of ourselves that have a pre-concern with the things of those house, whatever house it falls in. So this is also a good place where I want to bring up my philosophy of the evolution of the houses, right? The houses have a natural evolutionary quality to them, where each house kind of evolves into the next. So for example, the fourth house is the home and the role that you play within the home, and the fifth house is where it is that you express yourself freely. So it's about like you as a kid going out and having a certain amount of freedom and going out and playing in the neighborhood, right? And then that evolves into the sixth house, where your parents call you back home and come inside for dinner, and you have certain chores to do. Maybe you have to set the dinner table, in the sixth house, mundane tasks. So Pluto is only going to transit through a handful of houses in your chart at any given time. And so the place that it shows up in your birth chart represents that primary place and that first place of hidden desire, hidden things, repressed fears, and things like that. And then as transit Pluto moves through the next few signs over the course of the first half of life or whatever, that's going to represent how it is that your sense of death and rebirth in a psychological and spiritual sense has occurred. So overcoming Pluto things is about making those deeper unconscious parts of ourselves more conscious, more so than any other particular planet. And it's about overcoming fears and reinventing ourselves, coming out stronger through hardship and through crisis, and through having to dig deep into ourselves. And so where Pluto is transiting through and those houses that it's doing so in, it's representing the progression of your transformation over time. and the major areas of life where you're doing some of your deepest work on your own fears and your own unconscious expressions. So those are just some general descriptions on what the transit planets mean whenever they're traveling through your birth chart at any given time. Remember, the inner planets are generally more conscious to us and they're more visible. And the fact that they go through the transits more quickly is indicative of our mood swings and our social whims and our, sexual phases, and the things that are more consciously of concern to those inner planets. Whereas the outer planets take longer to develop, they take longer to change and to bring the different phases of life, bring us into those different phases of life. So they represent more gradual shifts in our life. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to visit the links in the description below for more information on me and what I do. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers.